Hello and welcome. I'm Martin Groschwald, CEO of Konzepthaus. What you're about to see and hear is one of 12 panel talks from our Mobility Design Conference 2025 at the Munich Motor Show, where we brought together leading voices from design, technology and mobility to explore the future of our industry. In this session, you'll hear fresh perspectives and valuable insights straight from our stage. Let's dive in.
We are here to gain an understanding of the differences in UX understanding in different markets through comparing Europe, the US, and China. Luckily, we have some people here with us who do understand the different facets of UX in the EU, in the US, and in China in an all-encompassing way. In that sense, I'm very, very happy to welcome Guang Yang, UX designer with Deconim, a trained industrial designer who is a China specialist, albeit based in Berlin.
I really appreciate that, yeah.
And then we have Ivo van Hulten, who is Director Drive Experience Design at Porsche. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have Michal Matuska, the Director of Interaction Design with Kiska, the design and brand agency.
Hi.
Who's got 20 years of experience in the field to share with us. And we have Sidney Levy, Head of Design of Amazon Smart Vehicles and an automotive designer by training who has gained an altogether more holistic perspective. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. The first point I'd like to raise is about 25 years ago, one phenomenon had the automotive industry in its firm grip, which was the world car. The concept of designing, constructing and selling a car that would be acceptable, more than acceptable, all around the globe. A quarter of a century later, we can say that the world car, to all intents and purposes, is pretty much dead. Didn't work out. And there is, let's say, the rumor doing the rounds that maybe global UX might be heading in a similar direction, which is, what I'd like to ask you to share your experience and your perspectives with. Starting with Guang, please. What would your take on that claim be?
Well, I would claim that the world car never fully exists, because even like a long time ago, for like the cars have to be adjusted based on the market needs. Like there's a very famous example is the L version or L model in China. So because Chinese people are required for more space, so almost all the German brands, when they launch the model, they will have an L version only for China. Mercedes, BMW, they had called different names, but Volkswagen, but essentially just adding more space and adding more wheelbase, and also the interiors have to change a bit, and based on economics. And nowadays, talking about digital experiences, it's even more different because the digital ecosystem is different. So that's why people using different applications and people use applications different ways, and especially talking about China, there's no Google, no YouTube. So pretty much the Chinese applications set their own standards and set their own ecosystems. So it has to be different. So that's my claim. So it will be, it never been the same, and in the future will be even more different.
Okay. And Ivo, I mean, from a Porsche perspective, I dare say Porsche probably aren't quite used to having to adapt to markets and outside demands. What is in the air at Weissach right now with regards to UX and the future of UX for Porsche?
Yeah, well, maybe first also to start out, thinking about the concept of a world car, I think maybe a 911 of course, depending what kind of brand you're talking about. But for us, it's a real world car.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
true.
it works everywhere. Basically, it's a very strong proposition. It's very sharply positioned on the market. But in that sense, it is a world car. But I do agree that I don't think that we will have sort of a world UX. I think in general, what we try to do, there was a very interesting talk before, so about branding and stuff. Of course, if we set up UX in general, we also say it has to be somehow recognizable as something unique, also coming from our brand. So this is where we also take into account not only the digital experience, but the whole experience, multi-channel, of course. So, but then also to react on what is working in a certain market. So now we're offering special, let's say, on-screen interactions in China that we have been setting up. It's something that we are doing now since like half a year, 1 year. There's like a dedicated team there. So, we're trying to actually use the real advantage of software and playing that in the different markets. So we're heading away from that, but at the end, the product itself is still a world car. Yeah.
Michal?
I mean, I talk about this often, but maybe I'm really schizophrenic. I carry many personalities of a driver within me, I think. And for me, the world car was really a difficult concept because it doesn't even suit me in all my use cases and all my personalities. So I prefer a car that really is use case oriented. And if you take the 911, that use case is quite defined and it's quite clear also that brand is one of the more defined brands and addresses a certain demographic and certain kind of target group. For us, brands are always a big thing, and even within very sharply defined brand, we see that the need for personalizing and for making the interface and for making the experience very use case specific, application specific, and maybe even if you consider a world car as a car that's not just sold everywhere, but it's maybe the same thing that goes around. This is what we see as well. So like a road trip kind of thing situation, then you realize different things are needed in different regions. And then that adjustability and that personalization would be nice for us, I think, to see more and more of. So it's not just world car as in what do I need regulatory and what do I need customer in a different region, what do I need in different situations. That's always exciting to me.
Yeah, thank you. And Sidney?
Yeah, so actually, you guys convinced me that maybe there is such a thing as global UX or world UX. It's just that it needs to be highly flexible. Because, I mean, and at the risk of repeating what you guys said, but the regulatory environment is different in every country. So obviously, we need to adapt to that. The demand and the acceptance is also different. So, China, highly digitized, GDPR, almost non-existent. So that gives a lot of advantages and a lot of services that we can turn on. Then in Europe, I mean, obviously, we are a little bit slower to adopt new things. In America, people are a bit faster. So I really think that maybe global UX actually exists. It's just that we need to be able to adapt it to the different markets and making sure that we're in equation with the people that we are addressing. And here we're only talking about UX in the car, but if we think about the whole big ecosystem and the big UX around the car, then I would argue that it's almost global with turning on and turning off different levels. Because you know what? People will buy cars. I mean, we all buy cars, right? In China, in America, in Europe. We will all service them. We will all use them. We will all charge them. We will all sell them. So I imagine that this global UX can exist and should exist, but it should be highly modular for us to be close to the market.
Yeah. Speaking not so much of the future, but the status quo, in several ways, of course, China is leading in the UX field with regards to digital aspects. Does that mean that China presents the global gold standard that everyone must adhere to?
I don't think so, because I'm living here long enough. I realize a lot of commonly set user patterns in China may not, at least for a certain period of time, not able to successfully set up here in Europe. it is one thing is about the GDPR, and it's so these regulations are so like deeply set into like every consumer's mind, and also it's not easy to change, and also with that regulation, a lot of services are not available, and also like a lot of and even what's even harder is the perception of what vehicle is. I mean, here in Europe, it's where the automobile was born, especially here in Germany, and have over 100 years of automotive experience or history. Whereas in China, it's roughly just like for most of the people, it's just a recent 20 to 30 years. So how people perceive the car, perceive the mobility is very different, and that also changed what people value and what people want to buy and want to use the vehicle. And these things are not easy to change, and we have to wait for at least 1 or 2 generations to equal that gap, and then trying to perceive what is commonly set up in China. But it's not an easy step. Yeah.
And Ivo, if I might just ask you specifically, your employer has that legacy that was just addressed. To what extent and in what senses is that legacy right now for your job a burden and an advantage?
Well, I think it's both. So, of course, you have to turn your burdens into advantages. That's what we're trying to do every day in our design team. But I think having that great legacy, it's cool because it gives you a clear direction for your brand that you can sort of extrapolate. But on the other hand, of course, there's now major challenges, and there's a lot of things. I mean, I think a lot of the German brands, and Porsche is one of them, was sold worldwide. If we come back to that, of course, because of the Made in Germany badge and the quality that goes with that and all of those things. But I think Chinese customers have a different view on what a modern car is. So, and I think this is quite tough for European companies, especially for German companies, to maybe grasp the notion of how younger and different countries and different cultures see the notion of a car, or what the real essence of a car is all about. And I think especially the digital experience, I think China is leading. They're also super, super fast. But on the contrary, I think we're now getting more and more information that also some customers that started out having the complete digital information in the car, the complete experience was done in a digital way, they are coming back a little bit. So it's like also we're having information that more physical buttons are demanded, also in US, for example. Maybe in China less, but so this is a very exciting thing to somehow, how do you balance that out, and how do you use your Germanness and your history, but also you have to be brave enough to understand and move towards the future. And yeah, this is our big challenge, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So changing the automobile from a mechanically engineered device into a digital device. But I would just make the claim that for Porsche, that is not an option to do that 100%. I don't think a Porsche that's 100% digital is really a Porsche.
So I think also to touch a little bit on the talk before about brands. So what we do when we talk about like our brand and how we set it up, we always talk about the brand experience or the brand DNA, but also the product DNA. So for example, if we have a product like a 911, for me, it's something that you could compare with what happened in the music industry. There is still, if you see professional DJs, they're still using vinyl, right? There's the Technics turntable. It's super famous. It has always been there, and this is sort of a professional tool. So I see the 911 something being like that, but that doesn't mean, so within our brand we also have other product lines, for example like the Macan or the Cayenne, which are on a different, they're more like digital music, for example. So how do we do that? And that is something that we still need to learn as a company. We've been quite brave, but not always everything has paid out being that brave. We see that now with our numbers, but yeah, we're trying to move there as well. Yeah.
Michal.
I mean, I enjoy the metaphor with the vinyl. I take analog pictures, it's a great fun, but you know, how many analog photographers are there in between all the amount of digital cameras being sold is also something that we have to wonder about. I'm not sure. I really like that metaphor, and I hope it stays, by the way, because I do like those products personally. But I think we discussed this before shortly. Here in Europe, we suffer a little bit also with appetite for the digital functionality. And the car industry is a big part of that because of putting everything on price laddering, putting everything behind paywalls. So it's like, how many people really know what's a driver profile, which changes your seat, which adjusts your steering, which puts some different content on that. Those are like 10,000s of euros upgrades, right? This is a lot of boxes you have to tick in this infamous configurator. And then comes a Far East brand or American brand, and they just deliver everything immediately out of the box. So iPhone taught us many things, pinch to zoom, all of those UX like paradigms they have explained really well. They have put that into their communication, they put that into their advertisement, they basically educated us how to use their product, they created the taste for it, they created the hunger for it. And I think that if we are not gonna go around and put kind of more features by default, that is never going to change. So what does it really, how do I really get people wanting those things as well and demanding those features if I'm not telling them what they can do for them? Because like just put them behind Paygate on a configurator, no, I don't know the percentage, but certain number of people are gonna not take those options. You know, when you configure a German vehicle and you want to get it on a standard of a infotainment of an American car, then you are in for 20,000-30,000 euro worth of options. And as it works for some brands and it's a good strategy, I think when we talk about creating the taste and the appetite of the consumer here in Europe, it's maybe one of the lacking things that I think we could be addressing somehow.
Absolutely. Though if I may rebound on this one, I think the expectation also of the European user is far different than the one from the Chinese user, right? So I mean, I sat in clinics. I worked for Shanghai for a bit. I love sports car. I sat in clinics and the Chinese customer demanding in tier 2 city, demanded sportier car. So I got very excited, you know, I thought about exhaust sounds and stiff suspension. But once it's been translated to me, the sportiness as it's defined for a Chinese user is a fast acceleration, which is a far cry from what we know here in Europe, right? Trying to be a pilot in between the office and home. So I think the expectation is different, and more so on the digital side as well. Like we can see that the Chinese consumer usually gets into a car and really judges the car on the digital function that they can explore. Whereas for us in Europe, I mean, we wouldn't buy a car without taking it for a spin, right? To a proper test drive and really understand the dynamic of the car. So I think those things are super different, and hence creates a little bit of a different expectation in those two different markets.
This is all very enlightening, if I may say so. Michal, you might be best placed to try and explain, let's say, the more fundamental differences between a legacy automaker's approach to UX and an upstart's digital-first approach to it. How would you just broadly define the differences between both?
So, tricky question, but basically I can just say that we are lucky to work on a lot of spaces in our studio. So not just car, but it could be a bank, it could be some sort of a train, it could be really different things. And in the car industry, the UX is still almost a side topic. So we see here wonderful presentation at IAA, amazing designs, right? Cars that kind of create I want to have. And even that, to a degree, how good we are making those things is a little bit of the baggage as well, because it's almost like, well, yeah, we don't need to with that badge and with that styling and with that expression. Who cares UX? Until you make the learnings, until you really come up with, okay, that new thing is actually very valuable to me, and one of my colleagues said it very well, and she said, "Are we observing enough?" And how do you come up with new features? You know, do we still really observe enough? Do we see the mother with children in front of a supermarket trying to get the shopping into the car, the hands all full? Is that how we come up with a car boot that opens by itself? Because that would be many, many more things that we can do than just car boot opening by itself, when we really are a little bit more empathic and looking how people live. I think at where I am, we are more lucky to do it away from car projects. We've even had projects with what you could say is a truck, where that was the core of it. So that's much bigger space as well in the truck. You have more that you can create for that person. That person is not a pleasure driver at this point. It's his job. He has to be there for a certain amount of hours, often longer hours. And I think we are always better getting into it, and even us, really, even me, you know, it's really easy with cars to snap into, oh, I know. Yeah, I do it for myself. I know exactly what I need. And with the products that you are not using, and where you really show more empathy and where you try to show more understanding, we can come with quite revolutionary, I think, new digital concepts, and we are not burdened by the legacy at all. It's just when we snap into the mindset, I do it for myself, and I live personally under a mountain, and I like to go up that mountain, then I know what's the result of that, and how that will look like. I think that if we get a little bit better listening, looking, observing, then we've got all the skills, we've got all the talent. I'm not sure that answered. But
No.
Though I would argue that we also suffer. I don't know if we're suffering, but we also have a legacy of governance and an idea in Europe in automotive design. I think this morning we had a very good question in the first panel, where it was asked, would a UX designer become the next leader in the car industry? And the answer was like, probably not, right? And probably not, which might be a good answer, I don't know. And this probably not was driven by the fact that we attach a lot of importance on how the car looks and what is the first impression it gives, which might be the right thing, the right answer in Europe, might be the right answer today, but then we really limit ourselves in regards to what can we do to better accommodate the user, because UX should also be about inventing the sixth door, right? Something that's super obvious that we haven't thought of. And this is something that I don't think in our current governance we're giving a chance to.
At Konzepthaus, we combine design know-how with industry insights to help companies move forward. Our consulting teams work with both startups and leading OEMs to refine the design processes and develop tailored strategies to enable them to stay ahead of the fast-changing industry. Simply put, we help design leaders make better decisions for the future. Find out more about our consulting services at konzepthaus-consulting.com.
Ivo, you in the past you've been working as an interior designer. So, having made the jump to UX, what have been your main learnings since this became your field of profession and expertise?
Yeah. I had some responsibilities. I mean, I did some exterior, some interior. Even I had some responsibilities for color and trim. And actually, I think this was sort of an aspect that I wasn't that deeply involved until now. I mean, I was leading a team, but I wasn't that deeply involved as I am now the last couple of years. And actually, it touches also on the point that you were saying. I think towards the future, towards where the car is heading to, I think it's one of the most important aspects to understand better what is the general experience. And it's not only the product, the car, it's the whole, it's omni-channel. You start way before you enter the car, and it ends way later as you already exited the car. And then it's about like services, like, I mean, I just came back from the US. If you're there in San Francisco and you see everything autonomous, driving by, getting in, having the right app to order, all of that. I mean, there's tremendous amount of opportunities coming our way, but they are not in adding more lines on the clay model, yeah? I mean, this is a fantastic part of the job. but it's also a very limited part of the job. I mean, I think nowadays it's sort of a, like people expect you to have fantastic exterior styling, and this still is something that lures you into the brand, but it's sort of falling in love, but it doesn't mean like getting married to the brand, right? And getting married to something and sticking with something, it takes a whole different level of building something up, right? That's also on a personal level, it's the same, yeah? So keeping a marriage alive is a different practice as just falling in love. Yeah, so this is sort of the challenge for the next couple of years, I think, for all of us. So in that aspect, I'm very happy to sort of add that to my personal portfolio. Yeah.
And I mean, as we know within the industry, in the unofficial hierarchy, interior design still tends to be below exterior design, certainly with regards to perception. How would the four of you, where would you put UX design? Is it on par with interior design? Is it slightly below? Is it slightly above?
I think that we are, I mean, probably depends on the company. So I wouldn't want to take a general statement, but I think that UX design, if we take it seriously, should also drive the product roadmap and the product backlog. Because in reality, we know we're inventing new services, we're inventing new functions, but someone has to make it happen, right? And usually it's product planning, it's not design, so it's out of our hands. So I think we've been very good at suggesting roadmap, but we haven't been very good at making sure that it happens and that we can evolve it. And so by that, I mean, if we think that UX is something very important for the automotive in the future, I think it should be above exterior styling, and it probably is not today.
Guang, I mean, this is a very hypothetical question, but what would you assume that the chances of a UX designer becoming VP of design with a Chinese brand are higher than elsewhere?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, because for example, I know like companies like Huawei, they don't. I mean, they are also collaborating with cars, and then they're collaborating with the auto. They don't have factory, but also they're collaborating with the automakers, the traditional Chinese automakers, to make their own kind of part, like shared named cars. And but the most important asset of these cars, why people buying it, is because Huawei, the technology. So in this regard, their UX is their most important selling points, their most important USP. Then even at this moment, their UX department is higher than technology. And I mean, because they are not a factory, they are not a car company, so they don't have a like head of production or something, and then to oversee. I mean, their head of their CEO is from the Huawei Technologies, from the consumer production, consumer electronic parts. But I see the opportunity when they become a company, when they become a car company, and that could happen anytime if they want. Their most important asset is actually their UX.
Yeah, so I said it before, I think a lot of things are culturally embedded. Like say in the West, I think we're still all working still up to today to a notion and that was introduced by General Motors in the 50s, is the fact that when you bring in styling, it actually makes a product obsolete. So it drives economic growth, right? And this was sort of the starting point even till today, where car companies also sort of cut their growth from. So that's why exterior styling is very important, because it is this first look and then the sale is done and it's out of the door, you're working on the next one and you want to sell that one. But the difference is, I think now Chinese companies, US companies, also where you work, they understand way better, as I said before, getting married means having a relationship over long term. So also that means putting an UX designer, for example, or somebody more in a strategic role in the company, you would want to think way more about what is, what's happening over life cycle. What does that mean if you set up a car in a certain way? For example, Tesla does that very well. How can I maintain it the next 10 years? Is it still modern in 2 or 3 years from now when I spin up the next update? or is it not anymore? And actually, for example, companies like Apple and stuff, their revenues are way better, while using the product and not the first sale itself. So this is where there's the cultural difference between the traditional car companies that still have sort of embedded in their heart the notion of what GM introduced in the 50s, but we need to leave that behind and we need to go to a different cultural meaning of what the car is all about, and that has way more to do with UX because it's the interaction on a daily basis for a long time.
And if I may, that with a specific eye on Germany and German cultural aspects, this is still a country where you can pay with cash almost anywhere. So in German culture, there is just this appreciation of the physical that you also see in the appreciation of mechanical engineering. Evidently, there has been the realization that yes, the digital stuff also plays a role, but fundamentally, the German industry has always been about producing high quality physical goods, and right now that might be a cultural disadvantage to some extent.
If I may still, I want to, because Chris basically said it with the product management, and I think what we have been discussing for a while is really the structure of the people in these companies as well, and UX design. I think we are getting on a limit of the word design, or on a limit of our understanding of design, right? So this is really, it's a result of technology to a degree, but it's also the opportunity that it gives. And this is not coloring pixels. This is not just making something pretty. It's inventing new functions. It's inventing new kind of things for the driver, rider, or the passenger, or the second row, and so on and so on. And if we are not going to see the organizations change and put UX on quite high levels in those organizations where they can have an impact on technology, which is getting so much better than it was. So we are no longer limited by computers from the Stone Age in cars. We have fast things. It can do things now. But these whole strategies, and this is where maybe you said before also the legacy and the baggage from the past, companies like Tesla that was mentioned have it so much easier because they just do it. But to them, the revenue on the monthly subscriptions is what's enabling all of that. They can be brave with UI design because if it doesn't land, they change it overnight and boom, new UI design, right? So that has to be a strategy. That's quite a big thing, and where the product management, design, technology, all of that, and probably change management to a degree still today, have to come together. And it's really, we often play that role as a design studio because sometimes people come and say, well, maybe we are not brave enough as a team to put this together, but maybe you can make a concept. And then if the concept sits well with our top guys, then we say, nice. If not, we say, crazy guys, we never use them again. So we are kind of this kind of radical help sometimes, but it's all a result of what feels sometimes still a little bit outdated structure.
I think with regards to what we've just been discussing, we're about to experience a very fascinating experiment firsthand when Ferrari unveiled their first electric car with that interior that's seen input from Jonathan Ive and Mark Newson, and I assume aided by a CEO who is non-automotive with regards to his background. So we'll be here maybe in 2 years' time and discuss that car and whether it worked out in the market or not. As I said, a very, very bold, very interesting move, certainly.
But we also can't give those spaces away, like we can't just say, oh, well, we didn't manage here in Europe. There are so many talented people, and just to say like, hey, we can't do it. Apple, you take our screens and you run your business model on our screens is also, I think, not something that we should be doing. So I'm very curious about the example you mentioned and how that will play out. But yeah, let's not forget doing things.
No, I mean, as we're seeing right now in so many fields, Europe needs to gain autarky in several fields. As far as I'm concerned, no two ways about it. Sidney, something you touched upon earlier. Let's say a fundamental world UX. How would the four of you define this very essence of UX that could be applied and adopted everywhere?
So I don't know, or it depends, right? This is the better answer. It depends. Look, I think we're in a big revolution now with AI, LLM, and so on. So the way we're gonna interact with cars or with any product, for that matter, is about to change. So I don't really know where we're going, right? But what I think is really interesting though is that whether you speak Chinese, English, German, French, we all are about the same size, right? So I think the ergonomy will have to be the same somehow. AI is amazing and speaking is amazing, but it really offers a big discovery problem, because if you don't know what you're looking for, you cannot call it, right? So I think screens are probably not dead yet, but maybe we'll see less screens. And and then with this AI, I think this system will be a little bit more aware of people's need, right? And so will the service. I was in Korea a couple of months ago, and we had an amazing service. We went out with some friends. We drank too much, of course, because that's what we do, right? And there's a guy that came with a little motorcycle, put the motorcycle in the trunk of the car and drove us back home, and that was it, right? And that motorcycle drove a beautiful BMW X5 that was very nice. I don't think that could happen in Germany, right? Though in Germany we drink as much, right? We shouldn't drive and drink, but I think it's also the behavior of people in regards to their cars and what they accept and what they don't accept that needs to be taken into consideration. But I think giving the option is probably something that's very good.
I would say, first of all, it's a very interesting sample, and that's happening in China like every day and every hours. And also, I think that's also have something to do with regulation, how people can treat how insurance is handling your vehicle with the person or with the car only. But at that aside, so standards, global standards of UX, I think there are some kind of fundamental standards, like importance of driving critical information. I think everyone there. Unless we have entering a full autonomous driving age, then there will be always at least one people in a car and when it's driving, and this driver need to see the driving critical information and also the quickly and clearly respond to all the changes around the vehicle, and to have a clear idea of how to handling issues, human errors, and the pedestrians and the people around the vehicle, and all those risks or the potential risks. And I think other than that, a lot of things have to be locally adopted to local cultures, like entertainment.
So you think we'll have a layer which is the simple layer, which is unavoidable, right? Speed, I don't know, gasoline level or electricity level, etc.
Battery level, for example.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we might have some infotainment or services that will be turned on and turned off depending on the local preferences and regulation.
Not turn on off, but adjusted, flexible, based on the markets, and also personalized based on personal preferences. Yeah, I assume that would work the best.
Also, since once again we're in discussing the topic of autonomous driving, how will, let's say, the splitting of driving as we know it into driving and being transported, how will that be reflected by UX? Is it does the car change face, if you like, or will it just be different cars, the kinds of cars that get you someplace, and the 911s that will probably be around still in 50 years' time? What would your suggestions be, Michal?
I think we have an immediate need to basically, based on even legislation where the driver is still guilty and responsible of everything, right? We need to still help the driver. So fully autonomous is nice, and I hear it's there and it's getting there, and any day, and I'm very curious and I want to see that. But at the moment. Both of my cars, not very old, are more like wrestling with me when I'm driving them in a semi-autonomous mode. And then somebody in Germany, somewhere in Berlin, decided that I only get 4 seconds, and that's pretty funny because when I bought the car, I had 20 seconds of hands-free driving. So some over-the-air update turned my 20-second hands-free, which was one of big buying criteria, into a 5-second hands-free before it starts yelling and blinking and doing things to me. Also, thank you very much for the speed beeping. Most of the time, the cameras are reading the signs wrong, and I get these beeps. A colleague of mine told me a super cool tip. If you stay over 50 on F50, it stops beeping. So if you keep breaking the law, then you avoid the continuous beeping of your speed. So I think we have to stop this. I think we cannot do these kind of things because otherwise, again, our customer loses the fantasy. So I think that we have to still support the driver until we have a plan B, until we can say, and now you can put your hands off, and now you are being transported. Until then, it's really the driver, and the car has to do the best it can just to help him take the cargo, take the family, take whoever you are transporting safe from A to B, whilst hopefully having some fun, whilst being still on an emotional, positively side. And when it's autonomous, then it does it.
But isn't this one symptom of maybe a more fundamental question? I mean, I'm not the China expert here, but my impression is that as I said, China is more, generally speaking, is more about transportation, getting by car from one place to another. Whereas in Europe, culturally, it's about driving the car. You master the car. Even a Golf has a bit of 911 in the sense that it's a car that has to be driven at 200 kilometers an hour. It has to perform well at very, very high speeds and whatnot. And also the Western world has the racing legacy, motorsports. In China, that's not the case. So how can this be addressed? And also this was actually supposed to be a second question, but maybe we can answer both at once. Haptic feedback, these kinds of things. Also greatly informed by the Western definition of driving, which of course don't apply if you're in a Chinese megacity and you're crawling through city traffic. So can this gap be closed, or will the two just need to be completely separated?
It's so many questions. So no, like haptic feedback. I think it's in China still there are some like car companies like XPeng. They have haptic feedback on the driving wheel, and also I think NIO also have it. And some other companies also haptic feedback on the driving wheel to reminding the driver for different circumstances, so like risk on the streets or if the driving is driving fatigue. But I mean, in terms of like driving pleasure, this is one of the most common question I encountered. So in Europe, so many people are, especially male drivers, talking about driving pleasure, and I really heard this in China. Not because there's no people in China don't need pleasure for driving. It's like far-reach.
Foreign concept. Huh?
Yeah, it's first of all legal. There are some kind of legal requirements. You are not able to drive too fast for most of the city streets, and if you're outside the city, then the road condition is not supporting the car for driving too fast. So it's basically if you drive, it doesn't matter if you buy a 911, you still drive in a city road in the in a certain condition.
So
unless
that romantic winding road up a mountain and back down, that's not
that's
Chinese
not
concept.
common, and that's only certain limited to certain demographic groups, and also it's super rich second generation. I mean, the first generation would be too busy to work, and so it's a very different circumstances.
Of course, with dramatic effects on how an automobile is devised from the ground up.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I happen to know, like, if you reach second generation kids, they have like a super high performance cars that normally normal people have to work their entire life to afford, and they get that from 20s or even 19 years old. So they have driving pleasure, and they are sticked with combustion engine cars. They never want to change to EVs. But the general public, they know they are not going to afford driving pleasure. It's a luxury, so they have to choose between reality and a fantasy. So most of the time they will choose reality.
Yeah, and this fantasy has even informed something like a BMW 3 Series. It's a car for that winding road. Not of course not on a daily basis, but it's also been created for that. And Chinese cars needn't be created for that. Yes, obviously you are the winding road specialist here. What's your take?
I suppose to be, yeah. I think first of all, if you look back in the history of our brand, sometimes I think it's amazing what the founders already said, like having such a notion of the future. So there's a sentence from the founders saying the last car with a steering wheel will be a Porsche, and that's sort of what I said before, like with the Technics vinyl, like special equipment. I still believe in that, but I think it's a very small part of our product portfolio that is capable to do that. So, for example, coming back to China, that means also giving people that pleasure of driving, and normally they cannot experience this. I come from Holland, also there we cannot drive fast, so it's like, but if you have, for example, racing circuits, so for example also Porsche has it there, you can take people there and then you can make them experience what a car like that is capable of doing. And I never saw people leaving, without any emotional reaction. Once they had a drive on a track with a Porsche, you have to smile. You are completely euphoric because it's something very, very cool. And I still think that will emotionally touch with people. That's why that sentence is so true. But again, I come back to the challenger part. So our portfolio is not only selling a 911. I also don't hope this is the only product that we will end up with selling. This is a risk for our company. So if we want to be good, we also need to learn to play that other part. And there's still, I think first we need to fix the basics. So first of all, if you want to do all of that, you need to have an open car, you need to have a software-defined vehicle, so forth, so on. You need to do your homework. And if you have done that properly, you can start to embed all the technology that is necessary. So we are just doing the leap from, embedding the cheapest computer without having this notion, as what I will explain before, and just investing all the money that we invest in the build of a car in everything else, but not in the computer. And now for those other products, we are thinking that in a different way. We have now the joint venture with Rivian coming up, and so forth and so on. So there's a lot of opportunities, but we have to learn it. We're starting to walk here, with sometimes falling down,
I mean, you mentioned haptics, so Ivo has the best button in all of car automotive. Those buttons on the RS3 steering are a marvel. And I wonder how many people appreciate that. Maybe every customer of the RS3 appreciates that, but it's just you don't see them anymore. So we see buttons that are just capacitive plates, and that just, again, I don't assume there was a designer decision behind that, which goes back to what you were saying with the product management and with the bill of material and all those things. Kind of how do we manage to find as well money to invest into into really delivering the experience of tomorrow, and how can we now compensate for that? I don't know, I was always hoping for some economies of scale. So if really we provide that experience over the full portfolio of not just what was discussed, the 911 or Porsche, but let's say across the Volkswagen group, if there is a little bit more kind of a platform concept behind that, that allows enough brand differentiation, maybe even more than what we see on the market today, with over-the-air updates, then maybe it all becomes a little bit more affordable, and we can do that. And then I think that's the second step, to differentiate enough and to just play with it. But that platform, that base work, that legwork, as you say, we are walking, that still needs to be done. That's still not our thing. We still need that first capable iPhone to start bringing really good apps on top of that, kind of, in my mind.
Yeah. So you mean we just left the BlackBerry behind and are making our way towards that first iPhone?
That's a rough metaphor, but almost, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I also wanted to say, I think that's also a chance that we have. So first of all, I think we are now coming very late from the, let's say, maybe Western side, from the European side. But now if you see, for example, and that is an issue that also Apple has, but also Tesla has, is like, like they already have so many cars in the market. So the advantage for them is the amount of data that they can collect is way bigger than anybody else. But the disadvantage is they have to keep those cars alive, and those computers are getting old right now. So every time they're getting out a new, like a new OS or whatever, it has to work also with this older equipment. So now when we come in the market with software-defined vehicles, we have a leap because we can bring new technology, and we don't have the heritage that once they had that advantage 10, 15 years ago. And now newcomers, we are old newcomers to the market. Maybe this can give us a little bit of a head, like some leg room, whatever, next couple of years. I hope so. I don't know. But this is a sort of a chance that could be on the horizon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for watching this session from the Mobility Design Conference 2025 as part of the Munich Motor Show 2025. I hope you found some inspiration and new ideas about where mobility design is heading in the future. If you'd like to see more talks from the conference, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. There is more to come.